Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for November 16th, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freedman, the editor-in-chief. I'm joined by regulars Adam Levitan and Peter Jennings on Twitter at Adam Levitan and CSURAM88. And also joining the show is Jeff Ratcliffe at Jeff Ratcliffe. He's the director of fantasy for Pro Football Focus and a top 3 in-season NFL ranker at Fantasy Pros over the last 5 years. Jeff, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thanks for the introduction. I didn't actually know
that
was the case.
Yeah, you didn't know that about yourself. It's always good to have other people tell you how great you are. It's something I never experienced. So, Jeff, how was Week 10 for you?
Week 10 was one of the strangest weeks I think I've had so far. It was either completely horrible or completely incredible. Unfortunately, it was completely horrible for me on DraftKings and FanDuel. Crushed Yahoo for some reason and crushed some of my season-long leagues, but it was just a strange week. Mike Evans and Alshon Jeffrey really killed me in my cash games, though. It was I'm trying to forget about that.
Yeah, Levitan, Pete, how did Week 10 go for you guys?
Go ahead, Pete.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I'm on mute there. Week 10 was one of my worst weeks of the year. 100% exposure to Alshon Jeffrey and cash games across the industry. One on the small sites. Had Mariota originally in the beginning of the week and only rolled 50% of him. Somehow found myself on 50% Cutler. On DraftKings, did the same thing on FanDuel where I had 100% Cam. And then I got convinced into Tom Brady and Gronk. So basically hedged myself into a negative ROI week. And was bummed to see some of my good friends, Sahil lose the Millionaire Maker by 0.1 and Makasupa not quite get there. Obviously happy that they got second and third, but would have been even better if they took first. So not the best week, but excited for week 11.
Levitan, what about you?
Yeah, well, first I want to say thanks to Jeff. I've been a happy subscriber to PFF Fantasy. I think it's, what is it, Jeff, like $30 a year or something like that, which is really cheap. And I've been subscribing for the last few years. Absolutely love it. So Jeff's the man for sure. Thanks for him coming on. Yeah, I did well on Week 10 main slate on FanDuel. Didn't play Mike Evans, did play Antonio Brown, which was good. And I was all in on Mariota. Pretty much everywhere. So I love Mariota, man. God, this dude who throws for 4 touchdowns more often than Mariota? Like 7 times in your first 22 NFL games to account for 4 touchdowns. I'm pretty sure that has to be some kind of record. How many times would Jay Cutler have to play to throw 4 touchdowns in a game? Not to rub salt in Peter's wound, but I mean, the dude just throws like 1 or 2 touchdowns in every game.
Yeah, well, in terms of the skill game props, last week was pretty even all around. Peter got shellacked by taking Gronk and Olsen against the field. Levitan, you did well with Wentz against other $5,000 quarterbacks. And our guest last week, Sean Corner, he was correct that Ivory would score fewer than 9.5 DK points. So the results is that Peter is now 55-51, Levitan is 49-43, and I'm 31-24. So Jeff, our last 3 guests are combined 28-14. That's pretty good. What's your plan to keep that hot streak going? And then also tell us a little bit about your projection and ranking process. How do you work your magic, and where are you in the process right now?
Okay, so I looked at the previous guests. Those are some pretty lofty shoes to fill. Connor's a half robot as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how he does what he does, but in terms of what I do, I mean, the process really starts. So on Sunday, I'm on air, CBS Sports Network, until 1 o'clock. And then basically I go right to the train station and come back to Philadelphia. So when the 1 o'clock games are on, I'm on the train, but I'm already starting to do work for the next week as I'm sitting there, get home, refresh, try and get, I'm watching games by 4:30 on Sundays. But then on Mondays, going back through everything, every single player, every single aspect I can possibly cover so that by roughly around about now on Tuesday nights, I can get the first batch of projections out. But that really feeds into rankings. What's interesting is people confuse projections and rankings. For me, they are not the same thing. Projections are sort of averages. You have to be conservative in projections. And they sort of, for me, they're a launching point for rankings where I can disagree with my projections model. I don't have to think, okay, well, this is gospel and I have to rank these guys this way. So they're maybe 75% of my rankings are projections. But then Wednesday is matchups day. So I do wide receiver, cornerbacks. I do offensive line, defensive line. We now have that matchup chart at Pro Football Focus, which 2 weeks ago said that Latavius Murray was going to blow up. And I, of course, did not listen to it. Did not play Latavius Murray really in any DFS contest. But by about Thursday, I'm starting to feel like I got a good sense of things. But I still continue to tweak based on news, based on information, other things I overlook right up until 1 o'clock on Sundays.
Yeah, it's really interesting what you mentioned there of your projections being more averages. And I tend to think of rankings as not really averages, but more probabilistic, I guess, I wouldn't say projections, but probabilistic statements about how you think something might turn out as opposed to what the average actually is. But, it's great to have you on the show. Let's get into it. We're going to focus more on roster construction and game theory. And for the people listening and watching, if you want more, check out our NFL dashboard. The positional breakdowns come out on Thursday, and the previews for each game are out by Friday. Jeff, let's start with you looking ahead to Week 11, and you've actually, I think, just finished your projections for the week, or your initial set of projections for the week. Who are the guys that you're really looking at right now, maybe the chalky guys that you're thinking about locking into your cash game core?
Yeah, there's a lot of chalk this week, just looking through things really quickly. I mean, you got Andrew Luck. We talk about, throwing 4 touchdown passes for Mariota. Well, Luck with that defense, I mean, it's like you can almost lock him in for a 300-yard passing game. Aaron Rodgers, I think, the way they're playing right now, especially with a running back, not too bad. But you're paying up for all these guys. Those guys, I mean, look at running back position, though. I don't think it gets any chalkier than Le'Veon Bell this week. I also don't mind DeMarco Murray. I'm not really too worried about the work that Derrick Henry's getting. And then at wide receiver, I mean, Antonio Brown. It's like last week I said that it wasn't fair for David Johnson. I don't think this week's going to be fair for Antonio Brown, so I'm going to have a lot of exposure to him.
Levitan, who do you got?
Yeah, I mean,
Cousins.
Oh yeah. But I don't even know if he's going to be chalk because I don't know. Like we'll see. But I think that I did the initial run of ownership projections. You can find them in the models on Labs. And I mean, the guy that I think will be the highest owned player this week is going to be CJ Procise. Everybody wants to play Le'Veon. Everybody wants to play Ezekiel Elliott. Everybody wants to play Odell Beckham. Everybody wants to play Antonio Brown. Everybody wants to play DeMarco Murray. I mean, the only way I see you getting access to those guys is by rostering CJ Procise, and everybody watched that game where he was, I think you can make a case the best player on the field. And, bad job by me not being more on CJ Procise. I actually played the 2-game primetime slate and still didn't use Procise on FanDuel, which was just an egregious mistake. I'm sure Peter used Procise because, Peter crushes the small slates.
Notre Dame, bro. Of course.
Yeah. So, of course. So, yeah, a lot of regrets about that. But, yeah, we saw they cut C-Mike today. We know Thomas Rawls has been out since, I believe, week 2, I want to say. I mean, I can't see them just giving a ton to Thomas Rawls. So I think we'll see CJ Procise get 60, 70% of the early down work plus all the pass down work. We know he's a former wide receiver. It's just like the ideal player you want to roster on DraftKings. So my initial projection had him between 31 and 40% owned. The only thing that I'll think will keep down some of those other guys that Jeff mentioned, like Le'Veon, like Zeke, like Odell, like Antonio Brown, is that they're all expensive and they're all kind of in the same price range, and I don't see a ton of value yet. So, we can talk about Cousins and all those guys, but that was my kind of initial thought on where roster construction would go.
No, I agree with that completely, especially after the C-Mike news. Speaking of the small slate, I did not play LeGarrette Blount, so I'm no short game whisperer this week.
Yeah.
That was beyond tilting, watching him just score after pass interference calls. But, I agree with you guys. I think that the Steelers, the Killer Bees, will be chalk. I think Andrew Luck in the pass catchers. I'm curious to see Moncrief's ownership at this point in time. I really like Kirk Cousins, and I like what I see out of the Redskins in this spot. Curious what you think of Fat Rob. We'll talk about that here in a second, Adam. But, I think the cash game locks for me probably at this point is Le'Veon Bell. Procise will probably be in there. He really suits DraftKings with his pass catching ability. So, Yeah, we'll see what else pops the rest of the week. But I think that we'll see a lot of people on those guys. I mean, Andrew Luck will probably be pretty chalky, but I'll probably be leaning Cousins, who we'll see how owned he is. But I guess we can talk about him in a second.
Levitan, who are you thinking about the guys that are good?
Muted, Matt.
I'm muted. Am I muted?
No.
Okay. Who are the guys that you think we should pivot away from?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The first guy that comes to mind, and I'm curious what Jeff thinks about this, is, with the news that Rob Gronkowski probably isn't going to play for the Patriots with that punctured lung or whatever's going on with his lung. The last time we saw Rob Gronkowski out, Martellus Bennett spent much of the game blocking. I'm curious if with Tom Brady back, we think that changes, because if we don't think it changes, I mean, Martellus Bennett is only, I think, 3,700. Do you have any thoughts on that, Jeff, how they'll play Martellus without Gronk?
Yeah, it's interesting. Will they have to – do you have to block if a team has no pass rush?
Right.
I mean, all they have is DeForest Buckner, who I think is awesome, and I think he has a bright future, but he's rushing from the interior. I don't know if they're going to have to really worry about the edge against San Francisco. So I think that bodes positively for Bennett in this contest. The one concern is, do they throttle back in terms of passing? I mean, Brady doesn't project out. I mean, he projects out really well, like always, but his yardage total initially for me doesn't project out particularly high. But then again, you don't really need much out of Bennett to reach value.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if he's 3,700, and I think if a lot of people start saying what Jeff is saying, that they won't need him to block, I think we could see Martellus Bennett get really highly owned, because everybody's looking to save at tight end a lot. I would consider pivoting away from there just out of risk, especially in tournaments, maybe just out of risk that they do use him in a weird way without Gronk, like we saw in week 1, which, by the way, I did roster Bennett in week 1 in cash, and I watched the game, and it was like one of the most painful experiences of my life as I sat there and watched him block the entire game.
That was the worst week 1. He was the chalk, tight end, and then he stayed in to block. And that game was like one of the least predictable games in terms of what most people expected. I think that a lot of people thought Arizona would roll that game, and the Patriots came out and controlled the football, and obviously Bennett was not a great play. At tight end, I think it is interesting overall this week. I'm curious your guys' thoughts on Charles Clay at 2,600 as a complete and total punt. The other guy who's in that same range is Ladarius Green. I'll have to look a little bit more into the info on him, but I do think people will be looking to completely punt. Will Tye also in that range. So keep an eye on that. I do think that mid-tier tight end is interesting. Jason Witten coming off a big game is there, but I don't like the matchup with Baltimore. So I'm not sure anyone will really be chalk outside of maybe Bennett. I think we'll see a lot of guys kind of in this mid-tier range, because I think people also might want to spend up to Delaney Walker or Jimmy Graham. So I'm struggling a little bit trying to figure that out. Also, I'm not really sure if there's a chalk defense at this point. Do you guys have a preference on locked-in defense? Maybe Miami?
Yeah, I think people assume that Jared Goff is like the stone worst. Why don't we give us the scouting report on Jared Goff?
I like Jared Goff in college. I mean, he just threw like crazy. Their team was awful on defense, and they just threw all the time. So he looked like a stud. I mean, that Goff was terrible, but yeah, I mean, they were always talking about how he was going to be a high draft pick, and he put up gaudy numbers. So I don't know. It's hard to gauge. I'd
be concerned that he couldn't even push Case Keenum. You know what I mean? Like that. What do you think, Freedman?
No, I mean, I basically agree. The fact that – so in college, I don't think he was, absolutely horrible. He seemed like your typical sort of, pack quarterback. What is very problematic to me is exactly what you said, that he could not beat out Case Keenum. And I understand that there's – rookies adjust in certain ways, and not every guy is going to come into the league and be Andrew Luck and be able to sort of, run an offense competently. But it's basically standard at this point that a lot of rookies need to play at the quarterback position, and that he couldn't beat out a guy who's basically a journeyman. That is really disconcerting. And I would like to get Jeff's opinion on the sort of PFF scouting perspective of Jared Goff.
Yeah, that was split. Honestly, the half of our crew liked Goff better than Wentz and vice versa. But the rap on Goff, I mean, yeah, he looked good in college, but that was an offense that was pretty basic, spread system, You go into a pro-style offense where you actually have to do things and make decisions, and sometimes these guys struggle with that. The thing that you can say in Goff's favor is he's an athletic kid. Now, did he take a step forward over the last 2.5, 3 months in terms of what he's doing behind the scenes? That's the question that we certainly have to answer here. But a rookie in his first start, I do like that. I also like I think Dallas is an interesting play as well, because unless Joe Flacco is playing the Browns, he's terrible this season. And they're cheap. They're cheaper. They're 2,600. So I don't mind throwing a dart at those guys.
What about the flowchart defense of the week, Pete? Just whoever Bortles is playing, right? We get the Lions at home against Bortles.
Yeah, I think the Lions will be interesting. I think there's a lot of spots there with the Lions. I mean, we talked about tight end. We didn't mention Julius Thomas, too, versus the Detroit Lions defense. That's another flowchart situation. But, yeah, I think the Lions are a good spot, and Stafford and Golden Tate are also interesting on offense. So, yeah, the Lions we didn't talk enough about in general, I don't think.
Well, Pete, let's go ahead and start talking about them. You mentioned Stafford and Golden Tate. What are some of the conventional stacks that you have your eye on?
Well, I think the most obvious conventional stack would be something like Andrew Luck to T.Y. Hilton or Andrew Luck to Dante Moncrief. Those are stacks I certainly am looking at. Another obvious one is Big Ben to Antonio Brown. In general, we like to take them at home, but in this spot versus a JV football team, like Adam likes to say, I mean, they're just a phenomenal play as well. I think another interesting one will be Kirk Cousins to Jordan Reed or Kirk Cousins to one of the other pass catchers. I think people might overlook that a little bit. I know Adam certainly will be on it, so that's something that I'm looking at as well. And I'll save a couple others. I mean, if you're playing the Thursday night game, I certainly love Cam Newton to Olsen or Cam Newton to Kelvin Benjamin too.
Jeff, who are you eyeing in terms of stacking?
Well, coming off 18 targets last week, I don't mind Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson. I mean, obviously you're paying a premium there. You got to find some relief elsewhere. Not that I would play this, but wouldn't it just be fitting if Jay Cutler and Cameron Meredith went nuts or something like that after what Jay Cutler did to us last week? You talk about Blake Bortles as well. I don't think he's a very good football player, but he can put up decent numbers. And the way he's targeting Allen Robinson, since week 5, second most targeted wide receiver in the NFL. So I don't mind that stack either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you guys mentioned just about all of them. I think Russ Wilson might be somewhat popular just on DraftKings specifically where he's 6,100. That's really cheap on DK for Russ Wilson, who has back-to-back 27-plus point games. On DK, gets the Eagles off of a real big win over the Falcons coming across the country. I think it's a pretty good spot for Russ Wilson to play well. I don't mind playing Russ naked. I thought his mobility looked markedly improved this past week, and they showed him. Obviously, they talked about the no sleep thing, which makes you just want to puke. But they showed his ankles not being as taped as they were before. I think his mobility should be improved, and yeah, so him to Jimmy Graham I think is nice, and Doug Baldwin. I never played Doug Baldwin, and it just always just pains me. But yeah, I could see Doug Baldwin playing well. The Eagles secondary, man. I mean, McKelvin's hurt and playing bad. Jalen Mills is just a total disaster. I think Nolan Carroll is in a concussion protocol. Like, I have some concerns that their defense is really getting spread thin, especially in the secondary.
Let's talk about some of the contrarian stacks there. And Adam, you mentioned Baldwin and never wanting to play Baldwin. I would like to get the other guys' thoughts on him, because I think he's given the 3 touchdowns. And I mean, that just seems like very fluky, but also like very much what he did last season. Like, we see Russell Wilson starting to come on. Is Baldwin someone that you would have an interest in? And Jeff, let's start with you.
Man, I got burnt last year. Every week I was like, it's not going to happen again. It's not going to happen again. And it kept freaking happening the rest of the season. It's not going to happen again. I mean, the guy only had 6 catches. Last season, down the stretch, he scored on 1/4 of his receptions, which is absolute insanity. And last week scores on half of his receptions. 7 targets, not heavy target volume. I like the way they're using Procise out of the backfield as well. He gives that offense a completely different weapon that they really didn't have. I mean, Marshawn Lynch, really good receiver out of the backfield, but not dynamic like Procise is. Tyler Lockett coming on as well. And Curse is just a sort of workman, He's sort of just a guy, but he does his job. I think there's enough targets there that I would be off on Baldwin, but like Levitan said, I would play. I would definitely play Russell Wilson by himself without a stack.
Yeah, I like Russell Wilson a lot. I mean, the big thing with him is his mobility, a lot of rushing upside, obviously, and there must be something correlated with him moving and Baldwin doing well. I'll need to look into that, but it seems that he really picks up his production when Russell Wilson can extend plays. They definitely have chemistry in that regard, so that's something to pay attention to. I am a little bearish on taking guys against the Eagles, but this is definitely a good spot, and Wilson being more like he was at the end of last year, especially with the running, definitely makes him intriguing. Contrarian stack that I really hate thrown out there, but I guess I will, is Brock Osweiler to one of these receivers. Pains me to say that. I think he's so bad. He's basically minimum price on DraftKings. I'll have to see. Adam, do we have any news on Will Fuller? Is he going to miss?
He says he'll be back, so if you want to take his word for it, we'll see, but we'll find out more tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see any contrarian stacks that I'm in love with. I guess you could play like Jay Cutler and some of these like cheap guys. I mean, for me, I just wonder how contrarian Kirk Cousins will be. I wonder a little bit about how contrarian someone like Blake Bortles will be. I prefer those options to the ones I just named. One other interesting one that I'm curious your guys' opinion on, if you're playing the Thursday slate, would be Drew Brees. I think a lot of people are playing that, are going to load up on Cam Newton. In general, I take Drew Brees only at home or really, really good matchups. Carolina's defense is coming around, but they have been a sieve against the pass. I think that's an interesting angle to take versus taking Cam if you're playing tournaments on Thursday. Levitan, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, Drew Brees continues to play at a very high level. I think we can kind of throw out, we talked a lot last week about playing against Denver, and even though he was in the Superdome, like it's still such an impossible spot, even without Talib. So I'm willing to throw that game out and look to what Drew Brees has done outside of that. And he's just smashed. I mean, smashed San Francisco outside. And yeah, I think Carolina's defense, probably one of the better fronts, I would say, but still really bad in the back end. I mean, what do you guys think about how Carolina's come along in the back with Bradbury and those guys, Jeff?
I think they're still really weak, really weak. I mean, you can take advantage of them out of the slot. They've really struggled there pretty much all season to find an identity with who is it, Leonard Johnson there now, and Robert McLean was there. You can just light them up, and especially with the way that Snead has come on, he really seems to have shed that injury last week. Obviously good, and I love that you say you're willing to throw out a 300-yard, 3-touchdown game from Drew Brees, which is sort of the expectation.
I didn't even know that he finished with that much. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was shocking. You just think, oh, there's no way, especially with the way that Denver can get after you right now. I mean, interiorly, they're kind of a waste of space, but with Von Miller, with Shane Ray, Shaq Barrett, I really love the way Shaq Barrett plays football. And he's more a situational guy, but Brees got it done. And I think this is such an interesting matchup, Pete. I think this is a great point you bring up, because when I ran the numbers, he projects out over 300 yards, and I kind of wanted to throttle it back. But, if I throttle it back anymore, it would just kind of look a little silly. So I let it I let it lie as it was with the 300-plus yards against that defense. I think he does a number on them, even though it's outside, even though it's a Thursday road game. I think that's a sneaky play.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that, especially the analysis with Snead there. I don't know if we'd even say we want to stack this, but two guys I would want to get your opinions on. Garrett Blount and James White going against the awful San Francisco 49ers defense, especially awful against running backs. What are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that even in, kind of game flow neutral spots and scoreboard neutral spots, that the Patriots are still riding LeGarrette Blount. Like, they're not just like, hey, we're going to make this a Brady game. They're like, no, we're going to keep pounding LeGarrette Blount. So, I mean, if they're going to do that against San Francisco, I mean, dude just scores so many touchdowns. It's unbelievable. I will say that DraftKings did bump up pricing for the San Francisco matchup. They bumped up Blount to 6,400, which I think is the highest I've ever seen Blount at on DraftKings, obviously because he doesn't catch passes. So I didn't look at FanDuel yet, but I would presume he's a better play there. But he always seems to go under-owned on DraftKings because people typically on DraftKings do not play guys who don't catch passes.
And just one quick statement there. One thing that is interesting about Blunt and some of the bigger grinders who don't catch passes is that all year they have actually had a relatively high bargain rating on DraftKings, as if like DraftKings has been undervaluing those guys because they don't catch passes. And it seems that that's starting to correct a little bit, but it's still something that could be exploitable. Pete, go ahead.
Let's say, well, it makes sense that LeGarrette Blount has low ownership because I don't think I've ever played him in years on DraftKings. So the guy, I mean, I couldn't have been in more pain that game. All these high stakes head-to-heads and three-mans. I needed 15 points out of Brady, 10 points out of Gronk to win a 10K three-man. I needed 12 out of Gronk. And then at the late slate, got all this high stakes action, and of course the donkeys all play LeGarrette Blount, and it was literally just painful. So I'm trying to forget last week. I was terrible predicting the future, and I'm not going to get on Blount this week. So have at it. Someone else is the Blount whisperer. I'm like the anti. If I have zero of him, he's going to go off. And
wait, you're already saying you want no Blount this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just not going to do it. I think on DraftKings, maybe FanDuel will have a little exposure, but I'm not going to pay a super premium price for him on a team that spreads it out so much. You know,
I was thinking FanDuel. Yeah,
FanDuel, I think certainly will make sense. I need to check a little bit more over there. I've been looking a lot more at DraftKings, but yeah. I'm not going to be the guy who pays a premium. Like the first time I play him is the most expensive he's ever been. Like that goes against everything I believe in. It is a good matchup, but I just chasing my own tail so bad for one.
Jeff, any thoughts on Blount or James White there?
Yeah, I'm not particularly high on James White, but I think that's just my bias against him. And he's a decent enough football player, but Blount, I can't see how he doesn't go off in this contest. Huge favorites. The 49ers, if you can get past DeForest Buckner and you just run to the other side, they have nothing. Like their every down linebacker is Nick Bellore. Like that's insanity. This is a team that had Navarro Bowman, Patrick Willis, and they got Nick Bellore out there and Gerald Hodges running around trying to catch people. I can't see how Blount doesn't go nuts in this game, especially if they get out to a big lead and they just start feeding him. I mean, 20-plus touches. He could easily score 3 touchdowns again.
All right, let's get to some of the bold calls there. Last week we were 2-4, almost 3-3 on the bold calls. You guys were all over the Titans at home against the Packers. Levitan, let's start with you, if you don't mind. I'm sure you have a pick for your brand there. Give us one sort of like real football call and then one DFS bold call.
Yeah, DFS bold call, going to go with Kirk Cousins, obviously, the guy I predicted before the year to lead the NFL in pass yards. I'll say he goes for 400 in this game to be bold. I mean, you know that it goes fast when you play the Packers. They throw so often, and you don't have to ask the Redskins to throw more often. I know Fat Rob played well last week, or reasonably well for him. You know, I thought an interesting stat I saw from ESPN's John Kine was 17 out of Rob Kelly's 22 carries last week went for between 2 and 5 yards. Like the Redskins like him because he doesn't lose yards like Matt Jones. He doesn't fumble, but he's never going to like go off. So somewhere between 2 and 5 yards is like every one of his carries. But against the Packers, I think you're going to need to have Kirk Cousins really rev it up. So yeah, I'll go with 400 for Cousins and come back to me on the real life one. I forgot to look at that.
All right, Jeff, what do you got there?
I am the worst at bold calls because I'm trained basically to be conservative about everything that I do. So, you know, I guess if I'm going to have to make a bold call, let's go that my boy Procise goes for 100 rushing yards and a score. I think that's kind of bold because people are going to think that Rawls is going to get touches in this game. And Procise hasn't really done a ton as a runner. He looked good as a runner, got a lot of touches this past week, but he goes up over 100 bills.
I like it. I think Procise basically is, if he's not David Johnson, he's like the lesser version of David Johnson. I think pretty similar in the way that they obviously transitioned from wide receiver to running back, but also just the way that people evaluated them, their styles, similar body types. Jeff, in terms of a game that you like, is there something that you think might be in the bold arena?
Bold? I had one earlier, and now I'm blanking on it, of course. How about let's go bold and let's say I'm looking at all the spreads right now. That would be way too.
We can come back to you.
Let's go to Los Angeles beats Miami. There you go.
That was my bold call.
I mean, you guys realize the Rams are favored, right?
No, they're dogs.
They're underdogs.
I see -1 right now.
I see +1.
Where are you guys looking?
Liar.
I'm looking at the Labs dashboard, so maybe Labs is wrong. But
it's around. It's somewhere. I mean, it's such a small line move there because games so rarely land on picks. So yeah, I think but fine. I'll let you guys slide with Rams. I'm going to go bolder. I'm ready for my pick.
Oh,
okay.
All right.
All right, do it, Levitan.
I'm sick and tired of the Dallas Cowboys winning every single game, every single week. I'll take the Ravens coming off of the bye to show up and get an outright.
Wow, that's a good bold call there. All right, Pete, what do you got?
Well, just real quick, Pinnacle, it's +1.5 which is probably the most efficient place for the Rams as we're recording this. So I think it's reasonable. Levitan, I don't know where you're looking, but
all right,
probably take. I don't know. It's an inefficient line based on what I'm seeing. For me, I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett as a very bold leverage play here. I've been buying him just in general, not so far this season as much, but had some exposure to him early in the season-long process. Obviously, he rose a lot in draft boards towards the end of the summer, but I think this is finally a spot where he's healthy. Everyone's going to be on Doug Baldwin. Everyone's going to be on Procise. And if you want to take a big leverage play Seattle defense with Tyler Lockett, hope he has a big game and potentially a punt return for a double dip. And then I'll go just really bold. Screw it. I suck at bold calls, so might as well just go as bold as you can get. I'll take Cleveland to at least cover the spread, potentially get a win against Pittsburgh at home. As 8-point dogs. So screw it. I'll be really bold.
That was full on Levitan brand right there.
Yeah. So I mean, I've been burned by the Browns as a home dog like at least like 4 or 5 times this year. It's been so painful, but yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense. Like division game and everything makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Skill game propositions. Pete, you're the volume king, so we're going to start with you.
I just throw out the worst of it and just get punished, right, by throwing out stuff. I did get some Twitter feedback that we should do some skill game props on ownership, which I think would be fun. I'll start off with something a little more traditional. I'm really bullish on Cousins, but it's going to be hard to get stuff with Levitan. So maybe Levitan and I can take Cousins, and you guys can take any quarterback under 6K, I guess, or something.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
Under 6K.
I'll give him 6K or under, yeah. Also, if anybody wants to be on Bortles, I want to be off Bortles.
Yeah, so I'm looking at this. I really don't prefer any of the quarterbacks.
All right, how about under 6,400, but you can't take Wilson? I don't know.
I'll give you Russ. I'll be generous. I'll give you. You can take Russ first, Cousins if you want.
Taken.
Okay.
All right, fine. I'll take Cousins too.
All right, I'm on both of you.
That one.
If I have the choice of those two, I'm going Cousins.
Yeah.
All right, I'm taking all 3 of you on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. You like that. Does anybody like Bortles? I mean, if anybody likes Bortles, I'll take under whatever our projection is right now. Our projection right now is 19.3 DraftKings points.
I don't want to go long Blake Bortles. That's about as painful as it gets. Gee, that interception he threw this week was one of the worst things I've ever seen.
He's a train wreck, dude.
Yeah. Even the announcers, like they were talking about how they need to sit him to teach him a lesson and all this stuff.
Okay, so Adam, you're taking the under on Bortles?
Yeah, I want under 19.3 on Bortles. I'll give you 18.3 if it moves your needle.
Yeah. Okay. Whatever.
Take the point. Punish Levitan.
Yeah. Done.
As soon as that guy gives equity, you got to snap all over that.
You know why I'm pissed at Bortles? Because I played Ivory Jacksonville D in like my main tournament team, and like when you have obviously Ivory needs to be winning the game in order for him to have a chance, and like Bortles just gave him no chance to ever get like anything going. I was so tilted, and as I'm sitting there, I'm like, God, I can't believe I have this Ivory Jags D stack when I know Bortles is just going to shit the bed. You know what I mean?
Oh. This week was I had a team on my Thursday team and one of my league's team had Mariota, Rashard Matthews, Delaney Walker. It was like a great team with Antonio Brown. And for some reason, I exported this Jay Cutler lineup over like a ton of this Mariota stuff. Just felt so stupid at the end. All the sharps on Chicago, and that just worked out like a travesty. But it is what it is. I want to short a couple different guys here that I think people might be more prone to take this week. I would short LeGarrette Blount. You threw out that he might do 3 touchdowns, so I'll just keep going down the Blount train. I would short like under 20. What do we have him projected at right now?
We have Blount at 16.9 DraftKings points.
Yeah, I'll take the under on that. Jeff, you want the over on that?
That's pretty good. I actually think they might. If I'm going to be conservative, I'd just be slightly under that. Actually, I'm looking at my numbers, and I do have them slightly under.
All right, let me find a running back that I can take over LeGarrette Blount then.
Hey, Pete, if you drop that a little bit, I'll take it.
No, I don't. I'm not gonna just get punished by LeGarrette Blount.
You want Spencer Ware, and I'll take Blount.
No, I was just looking at Spencer Ware. No chance. I'd rather take someone like.
You want to You want to take a Jai against Blount?
No, I'd take Procise over Blount. I would take Latavius Murray over Blount too. I guess even I don't love his spot, but yeah,
I'll take Blount over Latavius.
Sure, fine, done.
I'll take that too.
Oh, great.
Jeff, any players you're on that you want to get a little action on?
Oh man, let's see. How about Julian Edelman?
Mm-hmm.
And anybody interested in this?
I like Edelman a lot.
What did you say?
I like Edelman a lot. I'm with you on that.
Jeff, have you noticed anything about his ADOT being like even lower than usual this year? Like it seems like he just is really incredibly low. And I know he's always low, but really low.
I don't pay as much attention to that as Clay did. He used it in his projection model. I only use it just a little bit. It's super low though. What is it? 7.5 yards downfield.
Yeah.
I'm not really overly concerned though. I mean, that's just what they do in that offense. And I don't know. I don't know if it has anything to do with anything, but last week I know the model really liked him and he was heavily targeted last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that does continue going forward. And you talk about the 49ers. I mean, there's very few places on that defense that we can say is any good, and it's certainly not at slot corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he could potentially, and not that he's in the slot all the time, but he could potentially have a decent day here.
So definitely Edelman over Moncrief?
I have Edelman over Moncrief, yeah.
And what about Edelman versus Diggs?
I'll take Moncrief over Edelman. I want to buy. I'll go long Moncrief this week, just to stay on brand.
Yeah, I'll take Edelman there too. I think for DraftKings scoring.
Yeah, Edelman and Diggs are super close. I have Diggs up over 30% of the targets now, which is just insanity to have that kind of a number projected. But I can't see any reason why we don't project him at that. Those guys are sort of back to back, and Arizona without Matthew, you can throw on them a little bit, and he runs out of the slot so much. I don't know if Patrick Peterson's going to follow him or not. I'm going to have to take a closer look at what they do. So I haven't projected that part of this matchup yet. That's tomorrow for me.
Yeah, no, I don't think Peterson will go into the slot just off of, I think what we've seen in the past. But for Diggs, is it concern you with, I don't know, maybe it helps Diggs that their offensive line is so bad, and obviously Arizona's pass rush is pretty good. Does it concern you that Bradford will just be on his back the whole game, or you think he just can get it out quickly to Diggs?
I think he gets it out quickly, and I don't think he has too much of an issue. I mean, he's going to get sacked in that game, but I don't think it's that much of an issue.
Yeah.
Here, Jeff, how do you compare Julian Edelman with Snead? I know Snead's a Thursday night guy, but thinking about those two, I know Snead's a lot cheaper too, but what are your thoughts?
I think there are more mouths to feed in New Orleans, and that's the only drawback. This week it could be more of a Michael Thomas game. It could be more of a Brandon Cooks game. And for me, when you look at target share, I project all of those guys equally, whereas you go to New England and it's not close at wide receiver. You have the other guys there. Hogan gets a couple targets. Malcolm Mitchell was even involved last week. Amendola's there, but it's really running back. In this case, now still James White, but maybe eventually Dion Lewis, tight ends, and and Edelman. So I think that's the sort of the tipping point. That's the breaking point for me with those two. I like Snead. I like the way he played last week, and maybe in another scenario it'd be a little bit closer. But I do give the edge to Edelman this week.
Okay, so I'll take if you would give me like a few points or something, or whatever you think is fair. I would take Snead if you're taking Edelman.
I can give you 2 points.
Okay, I'll do that.
All right.
I want to hear Jeff's take on the Bears potentially without Jordan Howard and Cam Meredith.
Without them, it's pretty much the same take I had with them. Run in fear, screaming for the hills from the Chicago Bears right now. Jay Cutler, that was one of the worst quarterback performances that I have seen in recent memory in a game that he had no business being bad in. The Bucs don't generate a pass rush. They have no pass rush. I mean, Noah Spence, maybe he'll be good down the road. He had a couple of bright moments this season, but no pass rush. They have no cornerbacks. I mean, Vernon Hargreaves is going to be a good quarterback in a few years. Jude Ajay-Bariba, you're not taking advantage of these guys, then I don't know what the heck's happening. So I'm not really – I even wrote this in season-long waivers column today. I said – you can pick up Meredith, but don't really expect that much from him. You can pick up Eddie Royal, but don't expect much from him. And if you really think you're that smart guy and go and pick up Marcus Wilson, okay, good for you, but you're not going to get anything from him. So I really just don't like them. I like Jordan Howard as a player. I just don't like the Bears across the board.
Yeah. I think Cameron Meredith will be somewhat popular because people are going to be like, they'll be able to project Cameron Meredith for literally, 7, 8, 9 targets at 4,100, and people are going to get sucked into that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And I think if anything, Zach Miller is kind of the only thing that I might like there because we know that Cutler already has chemistry. He's going to be looking at him a lot. And Cutler does that. He locks eyes with one receiver, and then boom, that guy's got 12 targets, at the end of the game or whatever it is. So if anything, and I think that might possibly be contrarian, I don't know. I haven't really looked at a projected ownership percentage just yet, but that might be the only piece I'd be looking at.
I want to go long T.Y. Hilton. Anyone want to take a player against him, or I would take T.Y. Hilton versus Jordy if you wanted to take Jordy.
I think Jordy's going to see a lot of Josh Norman, right, Jeff?
He should.
Yeah.
He's not going to be in the slot too often. Josh Norman pretty much shadow him on the outside.
Yeah.
And something to consider when the Packers went up against the Bears, we saw Rodgers say, well, screw it, I'm not going to throw against their best corner. Not that Tracy Porter's any good, but he's by far the Bears' best corner. And Rodgers basically didn't look at Nelson the entire game. So sometimes they do that when it is a obvious matchup to avoid.
You want to give me AJ Green against T.Y. Hilton?
No one over 8K, Levitan. Look at you sheepishly. No, anyone under 8K you can take. Anybody.
I mean, T.Y. Hilton's in the nut spot.
Yeah, you want to take 8? Oh, yeah. How about this, Levitan? I'll take Antonio Brown. You can have T.Y. Hilton.
I'll take T.Y. Hilton against AJ Green.
You want T.Y. Hilton?
Yeah, I'll take him against AJ Green. Let's just flip it.
I'll take AJ Green, sure.
Fine.
There you go.
How did that happen?
Gotta fight back against that.
It's a $600 difference, and T.Y. Hilton's in the nut spot.
Yeah, but it's AJ Green.
I also think Beckham's in a good spot. It pains me to say it, but
I mean, AJ Green has just been he's too good to. I mean, it's like T.Y. Hilton is right there, but yeah, you gotta take AJ Green, Beckham, and Evans over T.Y. I think. Mike Evans maybe will go under owned this week after burning people last week.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think people are really scared of, and he's capable of getting burned.
Yeah, people are going to say, Peters is going to be on him, but Peters only plays one side, and Evans moves around.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's look at some tight ends. I don't think we've hit tight end yet.
I'll take a Blake Bortles. I'll take Julius Thomas versus someone. Or old man Jason or something.
I'll take Ebron over Julius Thomas.
Done. Same game. All right.
What do you like there, Jeff? Ebron versus Julius Thomas?
I don't think it's really close. Honestly, I think Ebron. I mean, the
Yes.
targets that he saw before the bye, he's taking that step forward. He's tight end. The learning curve is so steep, and he's really starting to show maybe that athletic potential that it ended up causing him to be selected in the first round. Guys, I'm struggling, man. I started at 6:45 a.m. today. Gas is running out, man.
All right, yeah.
We totally understand.
Yeah.
And, well, we can end there. I do agree. You guys sold me on Ebron, but
That was quick.
I'll take the flow charts on Julius Thomas.
My rambling sold you on Eric Ebron. I think Ebron's interesting, man. I really do. I like him. I like him in that spot against the Jags as well.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, good show, guys. Jeff, thanks so much for being on the show. Everyone be sure to check out his work at PFF. And obviously, thanks to Adam and Pete on Twitter. Everyone, Jeff Ratcliffe, Adam Levitan, and CSU Ram 88. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattFTheOracle. I'm Matthew Freedman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 11. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. And everyone, thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.